What's good, y'all? It's your boy Mixtape Muff. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. But we got a new one from the game that's roughly 2 hours long, entitled DRILLMATIC Heart vs. Mind. Now, the game is someone who I would describe as a talented rapper who is easy to dislike. His excessive name dropping, his social media antics, and his shock value bars can be a bit much. I think my main criticism with the game is that I can never entirely tell when he's being authentically himself in his songs, or if he's capping or, playing some kind of a role either to pay homage or to get attention. But despite these issues, Game is a dope MC who has a knack for making, pretty good albums. The documentary is mostly regarded as a classic, while Documentary 2 and 2.5 are worthy follow-ups. To be honest, I didn't really care for his 1992 release because it relied too heavily on overused samples, thus making it sound more like a mixtape where he was paying homage to some of the classics. But getting right into DRILLMATIC, it contains 30 songs and lasts approximately 2 hours, which is not a practical album length in these times, considering the rate that music is released. So I typically like to listen to an album at least 3 times before I review it, if possible. So that meant that I had to set aside 6 hours for this Game album. Okay, I'm done complaining. This Game project has a plethora of features and producers on the production front. He has Hit Boy, Big Duke, Devon, Mike Dean, DJ Paul, DJ Mustard, DJ Premier, Bongo by the Way, London on the track, Timberland and Swiss Beats. I'll talk about the features later, but with that being said, let me go ahead and just hit y'all with this track-by-track breakdown. This opens with One Time, which has a dusty and stripped-back beat that samples vocals from Tupac and Biggie's Runnin' and Ice-T's Colors. So Game is bringing us into his world of gangbanging the West Coast way. I did like the following lines. Intricate gang signs cause phones getting tapped out. We them dudes that Franklin and Leon trying to act out. Obviously, Snowfall reference. So yeah, solid opener that is simple but effective as far as setting that old school West Coast tone. I did feel it transitioned pretty seamlessly into the second song, Easy, which features Kanye. Now, this was a single released months back. This served as the dedication record to the late, great Compton OG, Eazy-E. We do get this minimalist beat from Hit Boy and Mike Dean that does sound like it could have been from the Donda era sessions, and DJ Premier even has a production credit as well. All in all, this was a pretty standout single that honors a West Coast great. Right after is Burning Checks, which has a quintessential drill beat. It's dark and atmospheric. I wouldn't consider it a bad song, but I probably wouldn't be in a rush to replay it either. And this features Fabio Foreign, who in my opinion sounded better on this particular track than the Game. Although I don't think it should serve as much of a surprise, considering that this is the kind of production that is suited more for Fabio. Following this is Voodoo, featuring a hook from Boa QG. Now, instrumentally, it's not bad, as I kind of like this shadowy trap beat, and the chorus from Boa QG is catchy enough. It's just that I didn't care for Game's higher-pitched vocals here. As a result, I wouldn't be in a hurry to revisit this, so I would consider it a filler. Things do heat up more with the track Home Invasion, which has a high energy raw instrumental from Big Duke. This time Game uses a double time flow, but he sounds much more agile than on the preceding 2 songs. Perhaps it was because the beat was more traditional in nature. The Game does some storytelling, reflecting on his days coming up in Bompton. But yeah, a dope song that I would consider as one of the highlights earlier in the album. What follows is o.p.p featuring NBA Youngboy. It's set to a hard as nails trap and drill beat from the one and only DJ Paul, who doesn't seem to miss on the production front. This one is a heavy banger where the two provide us with heavy drill talk. However, the Game got outshined by his guest feature. It's not the Game's verse was bad at all. However, NBA Youngboy just brought a little more swag to this record. Immediately after is Outside with YG. The tempo slows down because of the chill and ghostly backdrop, and the theme here is about street credibility and being outside for real. Overall, the song is up to par, but a little low-key, which isn't a bad thing, I guess. Afterwards is La La Land, which is a dedication to LA and the gang lifestyle. It's another DJ Paul production, but this time he samples the beat that was used on Ice Cube's Friday and Jay-Z's Show Me What You Got. So I was torn on this somewhat because I do like the sample. However, it is a bit overused and kind of predictable the Game would select it. Other than that, I would consider it to be a decent record. I mean, Game is giving us some pretty vivid LA gang imagery. Now, this does flow well into Change the Game, which pretty much contains the same sample for Jay-Z's Change the Game off the Dynasty album. This is a Hit Boy production. He may have tweaked it slightly, but it's essentially the same beat. Now, to be honest, I actually didn't mind this one, but it serves as like one of 30 Jay-Z nods or references on this album, which does get a little repetitive. The Game does seem obsessed with Jay-Z on this record, but I guess the positive to that is it gives Dr. Dre a break. The subsequent track is How Far I Came, another Hit Boy production, but this time with a soothing piano melody. It features a hook from Roddy Ricch that was memorable enough. So yeah, as a whole, pretty effective song, where the Game speaks on his come up. Things continue on this smoother note with Heart vs. Mind. This has more of a traditional West Coast jazzy boom bap flavor. It's slightly melancholy and not your standard DJ Mustard beat. But on this record, Game does some introspection mixed in with endless name dropping. But I did like the following lines. Can I get a witness to the unsolved murders of Big and Pac? A witness like the witness who witnessed for Nip and Pop. I don't care if he's Jehovah's. I don't care if he's an op. Can we really call it snitching if a legend is getting shot? So this was obviously in reference to Cowboy taking the stand in support of his homie and friend Nipsey Hussle. Some may have viewed it as snitching, but I was perfectly okay with Cowboy coming through and taking a stand. On a quick personal note, I've always considered myself to be anti-snitching, but I feel that when you have someone as important to the culture as like a Nipsey or Young Dolph was, and you have information, by all means, go ahead and snitch. The family, the fans, the culture, they need justice. I don't care, quite frankly, how hypocritical it must sound. When a legend gets popped, go ahead and snitch. Now, track 12, No Smoke at the Polo Lounge featuring Jeremiah is what I would consider to be standard filler. It's technically not bad, but it does feel like a throwaway from a project like perhaps his Red album. Following this is No Man's Land with Pusha T and 2 Chainz. It is a dope record, but a little subdued considering the features. I like the drumless soul sample, but to some folks, this record may not have the spark that they may have wanted from such a collaboration. But if I had to select who had the best verse, I would go with 2 Chainz. Then there is Chrome Slugs in harmony with G Herbo and Lil Wayne. So initially I didn't care for this track as I really didn't desire for a thuggish, ruggish Bone remake, and I'm not entirely sold on this record after multiple listens. But in fairness, I feel London on the Track flipped the sample well enough, especially with the addition of the strings. Now, I didn't particularly care for Lil Wayne's auto-tune portion, but I would consider G Herbo to have the most standout performance of the 3. Track 15, Start From Scratch 2, would end Side A. It's a sequel to his record off the documentary that was produced by Havoc. This one is not done by Hav, but it does contain the same sample used on Mobb Deep's Getaway. And you know what? I'm not actually mad at this beat selection, even though the Getaway sample has been used a lot. I do understand the Game's intentions here, as he was simply paying homage to Hav for being the first person to give him a beat for the documentary album. So on this track, he does reflect back to the earlier parts of his career in the 2000s, and he talks about what he could have done differently. He mentions at the end of the song that he had the chance to sign to Rockefeller, but he messed things up. Now, this is my first time ever hearing this information, but I guess I'll take Game at his word. Track 16, What We Not Gonna Do, contains a moodier sample-based instrumental that I dug, and there were some prodigy vocals from Quiet Storm at the very beginning. On this record, the game talks about how the community could handle things a little bit better as far as not overreacting when there is something like an argument or a disagreement. For instance, he says that the women don't need to overreact by calling up their brothers because that could result in a whole summer of senseless violence. And all that makes sense. And I did enjoy the darker production here. After this is Fortunate with Kanye, Dreezy, and Chiller. It's a Timberland beat that does sound like it was inspired from his 2000s production. You know, the fun, bouncy, flute-like bops that he's known for. So I actually didn't mind this record as the beat was catchy and Dreezy killed her verse. She actually had an album or an EP that had dropped earlier in this year, produced entirely by Hit Boy, that fell completely under the rug for most folks, myself included. However, after digging her performance here, I am curious to check that out. Track 18 is Ruby's Rose featuring Twista. It is a two-part record. The first portion features Twista rapping over a John B sample from the late 90s, while the second has Game rapping over a contemporary spacious R&B beat. I did prefer the first half as I not only liked the beat more, but it also showcased just how nice Twista still is in 2022. Following this, we get an unnecessary skit entitled Drake with the Braids, where Drake gives Game excuses as to why he doesn't have the time to give him a verse. Yeah, it's some goofball shit. Then for track 20, we get Nicki Beach featuring French Montana and Tory Lanez. Initially, I figured this would be the worst song because it opened with DJ Khaled vocals, but it wasn't as horrible as I expected. However, let me be clear, I wouldn't be too eager to replay it, but it does sure have a wavy component. Track 21, Talk Nice to Me, finds the game paying homage to the Memphis scene by sampling from Tila's classic Show Nuff. So while I could appreciate the nod to the Suave House label, this version sounded cheaply done. The blast hook and the money bag feature was all right, but I was just annoyed that the game decided to sample this in the first place. Then the overused sample jacking continues on Money Cash Clothes, produced by Mike Zombie and Swiss Beats, which obviously samples from the Hove and DMX classic. But please let me know in the comment section if anyone asked for this or if anyone cared for it at all. I will say in fairness that A$AP Rocky did do his thing, but I didn't get the purpose in Game, doing these nods to past classics. It just makes everything feel like a mixtape. However, track 23, Killers with Killer Cam, is actually a dope collaboration. It works. It was an eerie, dark drill banger that I have no issues with. Next up is the Black Slim Shady. It's a 10-minute diss track that feels like it's never gonna end. But it's more so a record where the game is paying homage as he's incorporating Eminem's flow with the strange Robin Williams vocal inflections. Yeah, this one was cringy and not good. It's a damn shame though, because it does have a really dope Hit Boy instrumental. Like the Hit Boy production here is pretty top notch. Track 25 is Stupid with Big Sean. It has a bright, funky, and off-kilter Hit Boy beat that did remind me of something from King's Disease 1. It's not a bad song, but I didn't particularly care for Big Sean's silly vocal inflections on the hook. Track 26 is 38 Special featuring Blueface, whose 10-second feature basically goes unnoticed. Now this contains a beat from Timberland that's a bit cinematic, but still low-key. Altogether, it's not a weak song, but nothing about it really stood out either. Although I did like Game's line, I wish death on you and the dudes that lined Dolph. Track 27, Twisted, has a slower, wavy, R&B laced beat. It's smooth, riding music, and on here Game speaks on the conditions in the hood, right or wrong. He drops a jewel on the youth by encouraging them to stop the drilling and stop the killing, but admits that they don't listen to him. Rather, they listen to NBA Youngboy. And this further proves what I thought before and said in videos, that these younger street rappers really have the ears of our youth, and I just hope that moving forward, more could do more positive things with the power and influence that they have. Track 28, Save the Best for Last, features Rick Ross and contains the same instrumental or sample from Jay-Z's Somehow, Some Way off that Blueprint 2. Now, it's not a bad choice if one were to sample another Jay-Z record, so I didn't mind this version. And actually, Rick Ross sounded like he had a pulse and even gave a shit. So altogether, I would say that this song worked. The second to last track is Father's Prayer, produced by Hit Boy. It's an open letter to the game's daughter. It was heartfelt, minus a couple cringe-worthy lines here and there, but I would consider it to be one of the better songs, especially due to the standout soulful production that we got from Hit Boy, who really knocked it out the park. Then the album wraps up with Universal Love, featuring Chris Brown, Cassie, and Chloe. It's a positive and uplifting way to close things out, as the game calls for peace, love, and unity. I mean, how can anyone really hate on the positive vibes the game is spreading here? And you can't hate on that smooth Janet Jackson sample either. Overall, I would give this project a rating of 3 mics. I think it's good, worth checking out. There are high highs, no doubt, but there is some filler and some records that aren't technically bad, but ones that I wasn't too crazy about either. Now, this might just be my issue, my problem. Maybe I'm being too picky, but I found his reliance on the overused samples to not only be repetitive, but also distracting and even possibly lazy. For me, hearing the game rap over such popular rap samples ended up diminishing what he had to offer in some cases, and instead made me just remember how much I liked the original songs more. But that might not be the case for other listeners, as you may have not minded the sampling chosen here. But I do have very high standards when it comes to how 90s and 2000s rap samples are used in today's hip hop. I will say, in fairness though, that the game is still nice with the wordplay. He can still rap well, and that as a whole, the production wasn't bad. Considering the length of this album, he definitely could have made more errors. And I will also say that he had a little bit of something for everyone, for each different type of listener, if you like albums structured like that. That being said, this album ultimately came across as a glorified mixtape that would have been more effective had it have been trimmed down to 15 songs, no more than 20. At the end of the day, I wasn't loving aspects of this project, but I was able to step outside of myself and to recognize, what some of the strengths were and how it may appeal to other listeners. My favorite tracks include Easy, Home Invasion, o.p.p, How Far I Came, Heart vs. Mind, No Man Falls, Start From Scratch 2, Killers, Save the Best for Last, and A Father's Prayer. Let me know what you thought about this album in the comment section. It's your boy Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. As always, it's peace and blessings. The game, DRILLMATIC Heart vs. Mind 1.